Hi, I'm Ted Haftegabber, founder and producer of Live Talks Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. Since we started over a decade ago, we have brought you hundreds of conversations with storytellers, writers, actors, musicians, humorists, chefs, and thought leaders in business and science. You can watch and hear most of these in our YouTube channel and our podcast. For details, visit livetalksla.org. And now, here's the show you've tuned in to see.
Hello.
Thank you. Hello. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Glad to be here. How are y'all doing? Good? Thanks for coming out on a Saturday afternoon.
I know. This is so exciting, and happy Pub Week for you.
Yes.
Your children's book, Just Because, which is why we're all here. We were just talking backstage. Your wife has been with you the whole week, which is amazing. And I want to get right into this book because I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book and also reading it with my kids and watching all of your interviews this week. You've done everything. And I love that this book came to you in the middle of the night. You said that you woke up at 3 a.m., kind of had this on your mind, wrote it down, went back to sleep, came to it at a decent hour, and it was pretty good, and you turned it into a book. Is that a normal thing for you to think of a full book in the middle of the night?
I definitely have had dreams where it's a theme that I'll go deconstruct and it'll end up being a chapter, or some sort of philosophy that I'll stay on and approach and trying to see how it can work in life, in real life, for weeks after. I haven't dreamed up a book before, but this one was. I actually dreamed up, there's about, 40 couplets in this book. What I wrote down that night in that 4 hours is about 200 couplets. And so I had to edit back because some of them were definitely not suitable for children. There'll be another after dark version of Just Because we can all laugh at. It's pretty funny. But no, this was I do often, even when I'm not sleeping or dreaming, if I find a rhythm to or a canter or a meter to a thought, like this was, the song was in my head. It was just because they threw the dart don't mean that it stuck. Dun, dun. Just because you got skills don't mean there is no luck. Dun, dun, dun. And so as soon as I stayed on the rhythm of that meter, it all just sort of wrote itself.
You dedicated this book, which I also really like, to the kid in all of us. Tell us about the kid in you.
The kid in me. I do believe one of my great mentors, Penny Allen, was always like, if you've ever experienced something, it's in your lineage. It's in you. You can access that anytime. She was an acting coach for me. And I've always believed that to be true. She just put it into really good words that I could understand. And I think whatever age we've been, we can go access that age, that feeling. It's hard to find sometimes. When you have kids like I do and some of y'all do, it's easier because you see through their eyes, you're like, oh, I remember that. Or I understand that for them. Because I think one of the main differences is for children, it's the first time every time.
Right.
And then we start to take things for granted. And yes, are we wiser? Yes, or what the heck is evolution for? At the same time, we learn better. We also can learn worse. And it's part of the fun of putting this, which there are quite a few adult themes in this, putting it in rhyme and putting it with illustrations is a more sort of almost in this digestible way for kids to maybe understand it, but for adults to still have a conversation about it.
I actually wanted to ask you about that because for those of you who haven't read this book yet, it's all about life's contradictions. And one of them, for example, is just because you're wailing doesn't mean that you're a crier. Just because I lied doesn't mean that I'm a liar.
Yes.
And there are, obviously that's throughout the book. When I have two little kids. I'm reading children's books all the time. And I love when there are children's books that you read that leave you as the adult thinking about something.
Yes.
I had that when I read your book. I was reading it with my kids, and they're a little bit younger to kind of spark conversations from. But was that your intention, was to leave the adult or the parent reading the book to kind of go about their day and start thinking a lot about the words?
Well, I don't know if it was directly my intention, but I was writing it for me. Meaning I when I had that dream and I got up and wrote, I wasn't thinking, oh, how do I make this kid appropriate? I was writing it for me, things I thought were cool, things I was like, oh, that is a contradiction. Oh, I have felt that way and this way at the same time. Oh, I have messed up today and made up for it tomorrow. I have made up for it today and messed up tomorrow too. I have done those things where I've called someone, labeled someone a liar who was a friend, or a crier. Right? She's just wailing. She's not a crier. This is just a one-off. You know, and I've regretted labeling someone like that. I've been labeled that before. And had to go to that person and go, no, that's not a character trait of mine. I just messed up at that time. Like, if we're going to talk about truth-telling or not, I've told my own share of fibs. I wouldn't consider myself a liar. And I've gone to someone and go, no. If you call me a liar, I got defensive. You know, those are fighting words. Right. And you call someone else a liar, you label somebody something. It's usually the end of the conversation. That person is going to immediately defend themselves because you've thrown a blanket trait over their being. Where if you say, no, you lied to me. Well, now we're talking about a moment. I can discuss that with you. Damn it, yes I did. Doggone it. You're right, I'm sorry. Let me tell you why I was trying to get away with this, that, and the other. Now we can come together. If you say, you lied to me, you told me an untruth in that moment. Now, as we all know, if we're dealing with someone who's a repeat offender, and they keep doing it, and keep doing it, enough we can forgive, but maybe not trust, and say, okay, I understand where you stand. That maybe is a character trait for you, and I'll remove myself from you, or at least, trust in what you say.
I know that your book just came out this past week, but have you had any interactions with people who have read this book with their kids and it sparked conversation between a grown-up and a child?
Well, I'm just starting to run into people that have read it because it did just come out.
Which is so
I've shared it with friends who said they had good conversations with their children, and the same thing that you said, they found that they walked away having conversations with each other as mother and father, or as parents, as adults, and saying they're having conversations with themselves. I hope it's a good balance about, leniency and forgiveness, but also responsibility. I think I was very deliberate about having it speak to one of the challenges in our world as adults right now. We're so divided in so many things, and we don't see the truth in living, which is a paradox. I believe we see everything as a contradiction, and we oppose anything that is an opposite. We don't see how a private sector can work with the public sector. We don't see how a left or Republicans can work with the Democrats. We don't see how all kinds of things. We just make, that's the opposite, so I can't have a conversation. Well, I think we're missing out on a lot of beautiful truths to understand and listen to the so-called other side. It doesn't mean you're not about anything. If you have a listen, it means now I'm well informed. Now I know where you're coming from, and now you know where I'm coming from. Now I can make a judgment and make a choice. But we make our choice and we make judgments usually now. We're so quick to just defend and cancel out anybody who has a different opinion that we don't get the full. We don't get all the information to then make the choice, which I think is very important. To do.
It's definitely a lost art to be able to hear two differing opinions and respect.
It is a lost art, and it is an art. It is an art, and we'll get by it. I think we're going through a little growing pain right now. We'll get by it.
I watched a bunch of your interviews, and I've read a lot of your interviews, and I personally am curious to learn more about how your family and also your faith play a big role in your life. I was telling you backstage that I've spent the past week listening to the audiobook of Green Lights, and so to be then listening to you in real life right now is interesting. But
is my diction, do I sound sort of the same? Or?
Exactly the same. And it's a very good audiobook, by the way. But you're also an incredibly optimistic person. That's like a big takeaway that you get from your Green Lights book and also just even interacting with you in person. How do you maintain that optimism in a world where, as you were just talking about, people find it challenging to remain optimistic and upbeat? I
mean, at the base level, I'm optimistic because I think it's necessary for survival. I think one of the biggest diseases that we all succumb to or can succumb to with older age usually is cynicism. And that sort of means you quit. You quit believing in. I do believe that the last hope is going to be the winner. I think the last hope wins. And I don't think I'm not talking about Hallmark card, dream it, you can do it. No. No, we got to break a sweat. It takes work, it's hard. We're wrong, we get burned. But I think optimism, realistic optimism is actually realism. I think it is harder in many ways to be an optimist, to keep believing in people, to keep believing in yourself, to keep believing in the potential of human capacity, to be lenient at the right times, to be hard at the right times. We know it as parents. It's a lot harder to say no than it is to say yes. Whew. That no keeps you up late. You're going, I just want to say yes and go to bed. You've got to follow through on those no's.
True, yeah.
Oh my gosh, they're harder to do. But I am an optimist. But I like I say, not a delusional optimist. I would say I've had times in my life when I was younger. I was raised on, if you're going to see one thing or the other, Mom raised us on, you're going to see the dust on the table, the rose in the vase. When we come out of bed in the morning for breakfast. And it was like, oh, jeez. Go back to your room and don't come out until you decide to see the rose in the vase. And she wasn't saying, don't see the dust on the table. She was just saying, like, which one are you going to choose to see? And I do believe that gives us more things to be thankful for. Optimism leads to gratitude. Gratitude leads to generosity. That generosity and gratitude leads to more responsibility because you're taking what you are thankful for, you take care of. You maintain it. You appreciate it more. And it starts to compound. And it starts to multiply. And I do believe that there's a real science to the responsibility and generosity that's bred from gratitude. And I do believe that the more things we do find to be thankful for in our life, the more things we're actually going to create to be thankful for. I think that's a science.
You talk in your book about faith as well, growing up with faith being a part of your life. I grew up in a family where faith was a big part of my upbringing and still in my life today. And my husband talks very openly about his faith in interviews, but people always say, don't talk about your faith. It rubs people the wrong way. What are your feelings on that? And do you think that it's risky to talk about your faith?
You could say in this business in Hollywood, is it risky? Sure. Is it a risk worth taking if you're a believer? Damn right. I mean, it's, I don't try and advertise it. I don't try to solicit it unless I'm asked. I, for one, am not someone who likes to get advice or have someone try to talk me into something, into, being this sort of believer if I haven't come and asked for it. You know what I mean? I don't like unasked for solicitation when it comes to religion or faith. Look, I don't believe that this is all there is. I believe that this when you have faith, and when my faith is strongest, I am a better human in this life. I actually find I get more of what I want and need in this life. I'm more relaxed in this life because failing in the mortal game, which we're all in, this life, it's like, well, so what? And then when my faith is strongest, I'm playing the immortal game. I'm chasing the immortal finish line. The one that is, someone will cross long after I'm gone, and maybe not, But that is a very faith. That part of faith relaxes me quite a bit. When my faith is strong, I see women as sisters and men as brothers. When it's not strong, I find myself objectifying people. And my eye gets low. And I think faith is probably one of my strongest values and character traits. I also think it's the one where I need the most work on. That I have so much further in a deeper faith that I could go.
When you're talking about your faith not being strong at certain moments or it being stronger in other moments, how do you get your faith to be back to being strong?
Part of it's ritual, whether that is daily ritual and daily prayer, or what I'll call bending my knee, realizing the strength and power and humility of being at the highest. Number two, there's great strength in that humility. I always had a tough time with the word humble until about 8 years ago. Humility meant, to me, it used to mean like, oh, my shoulders would bear in, my head would kind of go down, and I lost confidence until I heard this definition of humility being admitting we have more to learn. And boy, as soon as I heard that, I was like, I purchased that one. I'm in. I have more to learn. I definitely don't know everything, and my shoulders went back, and I didn't lose any confidence with that. It's ritual, whether that's I like it, how I feel when myself and the family go to church on Sunday, and we spend that entire Monday morning thinking about others in our life, being appreciative of what we got this last week, looking forward and being thankful for the opportunities we have going into the next week. And come about Friday or Saturday, I'm ready for another Sunday, and thankfully it's right around the corner. You know?
I love that. I love that. You're talking about family, and we were backstage talking about family, being parents, all the different things that, different questions and things that we battle with in today's society. You have 3 kids. Your youngest is 10, and your oldest is 15. We were talking backstage about social media and all of that. Yeah. What do they think of this book?
They like it. My eldest likes it. He thinks it's cool. He's like, I really like this, Papa. My middle, Vita, loves the illustration. She's a real visual person. The youngest one is still holding out on his opinion. But that's him. Man. That's who he is. But then he'll throw one out, and I'll be like, "Did you sure you read that? Did you get that?" He's like, "Mm-hmm." And I'm like, "Oh, he didn't get it." And a week later, he'll like throw out a line. I'm like, "You did hear me. Yeah. Okay, you did get it." They dig it. It's continued to be a conversation piece.
That's awesome.
In the
and
family.
We were talking backstage also about your decision to move your family out of LA.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that decision?
Sure.
Because I think it's, growing up with siblings here in Los Angeles and also with well-known parents, that's, I assume, part of the choice that you and your wife made to move your kids out of them growing up in Los Angeles.
It wasn't as much moving out of Los Angeles as it was moving back to my home. Being around, look, my mother lives 20 minutes from Austin. My oldest brother lives 5 hours. My other brother lives 2.5 hours. I wanted them to be around our family. I wanted to raise kids there. Look, I call home the place where we have the best relationship with time. And back home in Texas, a mile feels like a mile, and an hour feels like 60 minutes. I like that when that adds up. Out here, what is it?
How do you really feel?
A mile feels like 14 miles. I do get ahead of time out here, and it's understandable. I'm working. I'm pedaling. I'm hustling, going to meetings and getting busy, and I will look up and go like, is it 5 o'clock yet? And it's 2:37. Oh, I'm ahead of time. Now the other thing is, you go somewhere like the Bahamas, you get behind time, and that's kind of nice. That's vacation time, right?
Yeah.
Is it 5 o'clock yet? No, it's 9 p.m. Oh, cool. But I like it when I'm kind of right on time, and that's what I call home. And it was having my family and kids and raising my kids back there with my family and friends that had similar values. I've said it in the book, I'm conservative, very liberal, late. I want my children to learn how to block and tackle before they start playing whiteout. You know, let's learn the rules, let's have some manners, let's learn how to read right, have some manners, and let's expect those of each other, let's do our chores before we start going, oh, now I'm going to let my individual freak flag fly.
Freak flag.
You know, and look, I love LA and Hollywood. It's been doggone good to me. Mm-hmm. You know, the one challenge that I think everyone has out here is it is a commuter town. Not many people are from here. They're from everywhere else. And people come, one of the beautiful things about the business of Hollywood is you can be whoever you want to be. And the answer is yes. If you want it to be Halloween every day, it's Halloween every day. You know?
Yeah.
And while I love that creativity and that all of those options, I wanted to decrease those options and move them back to Texas. Decreases the amount of options of who do you want to be. Before I wanted to figure out who they are before they want to say, oh, I'm going to try and be someone else or create another character for myself.
I think that also has a lot to do with social media, and we were talking about that as well. And you were talking this week about you and your wife's choice to finally allow your 15-year-old son, after him asking for a while, to be able to have his own Instagram. And that's, I think, anyone who's a parent in this room, I mean, my kids are very little, but it's something that I think about, like, when is that day going to come? It's also a stress factor for a lot of parents because it is such a new part of parenting and a complicated one. Can you talk a little bit about your kind of process there for when you decided to allow that?
So Levi, our 15-year-old, who we just allowed to get on socials, is a pretty responsible young man, very considerate, and he picked up, I would say, as the pace we're going now, he picked up sooner than his little brother and sister have the trick of, oh, if I take care of my responsibilities, I get more freedom later. And he started to make those investments, that delayed gratification. If I take care of this, if I get my homework done Friday afternoon, I won't have to come in from playing soccer on Sunday afternoon. He started to get that, like, oh, if I take care of it now, I get more green lights, freedom, tomorrow. And so he wanted to get on socials probably 2.5 years ago. We were like, no, it's early for you, you're not there yet. I said, let's go through the practice in our home. What's your story? What story would you tell? If you could post right now, you want to share, what would you share? And he started, offering things up. We'd ask him why. So we're kind of quizzing him. He gave many presentations, visual and audio, about why he
did his homework.
Oh yeah, and they were good ones. He's a good debater. And then we started to say, okay, the next step was, let's find people on social media who you like. And before you even go on their social media, tell us why you like it. Now let's go on their social media. Does that social media mirror what you like about them? Did you like them more for the reasons that you liked them for before? Did you learn something new? What was your favorite post that they made? Okay. Oh, that one got their most hits. Or wait, that's your favorite post, but that got very few hits. So then we talked about that thing that I think we all have to watch with the social media is what's happened is a lot of us, children and adults, wake up in the morning and think, what can I put out that's going to get me the most hits?
Right. Rather
than going, what do I want to do today? What am I going to do today? And while I'm doing it, going, oh, this would be cool to share. And that's, I think, the order it should be, rather than immediately thinking, because we've got to, it's like sending our children off to a new virtual campus, or it's like giving them a passport to go out into the world. Even though it's a virtual world, it's real. I mean, it's a real, social media is real currency. Mm-hmm. And I'm for it, but there's obvious pitfalls that come with it. When you are exporting something about yourself, waiting for the world, most of them which you don't know, to tell you, so how do you think I did? How do you like who I I'm saying I am. And if it comes back yay, they have a great day. If it comes back nay, they're bumming and they're confused. That's not a really good, healthy form of finding out your identity as a young person or an adult. And I'm susceptible to it.
Yeah,
you know?
It's true. It is true. How are you going to help him through that? Because I feel like that's, an inevitable part of being on social media. And obviously, he has you and his mom as parents.
Yes.
And so there's that part of it as well. Do you worry about that, like the bullying part of it for him?
Well, we do, but we've talked about it and we continue to talk about it. We know, and he understands, he's figuring out even more now, what his last name does, what access it gives, what attacks it will invite. Real or not, true or not. It's talk to him about, he says, a bad comment won't affect me. I was like, yes, it will. I said, I'm your dad, man. I said, I've got a successful career. I got an Academy Award. I got 3 children, beautiful family. I get a bad review on some of my art. It affects me. The good ones feel better, buddy. Which is the other thing we got to watch, is the exaggeration compensation to the good side. Because what also I find that we do, kids and adults, is we start to put out a life that we can't live up to. It's so good. It's so smiley. It's so perfectly filtered. The lighting's always great. My life is so great. Man, you paint yourself in a corner. I can't live up to it. And so then you go out in the real world, and everyone's like, I've seen your life online. Oh my gosh. And you're like, I better make this good. And so that's another corner on the other side that we have to watch, is the it's too happy, it's too pretty, it's too clean, it's too perfect on the other side. And so trying to talk to him now about being honest, not just laying out every single, journal thought that goes through his young mind. Not everything's to be shared. There's smart ways to be vulnerable, and there's silly ways to be susceptible. But to be honest and not feel like he has to portray something that's better than who he is, but also not beneath who he is. So we're still going through those, and we'll have our bumps, and there will be more to come as he gets more freedom, and he gets, what it is with success. And part of success on social media is how many followers do I have. Those numbers mean something to people, that are on it, and that's fine. We talk about this. This is a fun word. Okay, we all want to be relevant, right? Oh, but let's not forget to ask ourselves, relevant for what? Because you can be relevant you can get real relevant for some things. You're like, that's not what I intended to be relevant about. I'm not honored with being relevant about that. I don't feel good about being relevant about that. But right now I feel good because I got a bunch of hits. Ooh, we talked about anything you put out, it's going to outlive you. It's true. It will outlive you and your kids and your kids' kids. So think about it a minute. Yeah. Before you press in. Yeah,
it's a lot of pressure also for someone so young.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a lot. We were also talking about your wife, as I mentioned before, who, ride or die wife you have. And she's amazing. And you guys have such a beautiful relationship. It was one of my favorite parts about listening to Green Lights, was just learning about your love story and your guys' relationship, and also the two of you as parents. And she comes with you a lot of the time, and then, also has your children. How do you guys stay connected while you guys have such busy lives?
Well, my wife does make a lot of sacrifices to make sure that we stay connected. Just as mothers have some unique magic trick ability to drop everything and go handle one of their children in need. It's amazing how y'all do that. And you just do it seamlessly. And it's like, without question, everything else goes on hold. Child's in need, go help them out. Before we had children, before we decided to try and have children, she said one rule. She put both her arms on my shoulders. go, yes, ma'am. She goes, you go, we go. And I remember having this thought through my head about like, I'm a Lone Ranger artist. I go off my Airstream with my dog, and I live on the outskirts of town, and I'm a Lone Ranger wolf here. And as I'm saying that in this ear, on this side of my brain, it comes in the other side, much more sensible voice says, you better nod your head and say, yes, ma'am, right now. And I went, yes, ma'am. And I'm so glad I did. I mean, having children and them going with me to work and on locations, even selfishly, has made my work better. To come home at the end of the day and have my kids who don't really know what I do. I make a lot of movies, not appropriate for them yet. You know, they weren't coming to the True Detective set. I'll explain that one to them later, okay?
Seriously.
But you know, but then to come home and go, what'd you do today? As a storyteller, I've got to turn that R-rated drama I was in today into a kid's parable. So I'm getting better at storytelling and just changing the verbiage to remember who's my audience. How do I tell them this parable about this work that I'm doing? Because I can't tell them what it's really about. It's too much for them. But they've come with me every time I've gone to work. We haven't, I don't think, been apart more than 9 days.
Wow.
In 15 years.
That's incredible.
And that's real testament to her. And she just makes it non-negotiable. She just makes it non-negotiable. And it has, look, are there jobs that she has been offered that would mean she needed to be in a place for a long period of time that she said no to because she goes, no, I don't know if my husband's going to go to work and we're all going to want to go with him. Yes, there are jobs she has turned down on that. And that's the sacrifice she's chosen to make. She doesn't feel like she's lost on any of that, but that's what she's chosen to do. And I'm thankful to be sitting across from her with the ring on my finger that she's got on hers and her husband, that she says that's how we're going to do it. And it doesn't make her any less. She is honored with that sacrifice for our family.
No, I was telling you backstage that I heard that when you were talking about your guys' relationship and her saying that to you before you decided to have children. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, she is like, major fan club.
Yes.
I actually interviewed your wife earlier this year because she wrote a children's book as well. Do you guys ever get competitive with your children's books, or is that, how do you keep competition just like completely off the table?
Well,
for
she
you
beat
two?
me to the punch, the first one out.
Exactly.
I don't think we get competitive. We do. I creatively bounce stuff off of her, and like she helped me with the editing of Just Because, and then went through photos. She's never trying to agree with me for agreement's sake, and I get very convicted about things, and she'll bring up, well, so tell me what this couplet's about. Why does that picture? And I'll explain. She'll go like, well, that's a great explanation, but that's not what I got on the page. I'm like, that's right. I'm not there to explain it to everybody who reads
in everyone's bedroom.
What's on the page needs to be better.
Yeah.
So I don't have to explain it. So I either edit, get rid of something, or I redo it, or I rewrite it, or have a new illustration, for instance, in this book. And then I put it in front of her, and she goes, I get it now. And I'm always glad that she pushed me to go, you're not there to explain. She did that with Green Lights a lot. And she would be like, I know this story. This is a great story. But what you have here on the page is not as good as what I've heard you tell me before. Okay, I'll be back in a couple days.
I love that. We were, when talking about Green Lights, you talked all about your childhood. Mm-hmm. In your book, you also talk about your parents, and you're still obviously very close to your mom, and you live close to your family. Family is very important to you. Are there certain things from your own upbringing that you are bringing into your parenting with your 3 children, and are there certain things that you're leaving behind?
Yes, trying to update and amend, but keep the same iOS, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Look, my parents, I talked about it in the book. There was 4 things they taught that they were really sticklers on. Don't say can't. You're having trouble. But don't say can't. Boy, that was a stickler with my dad. That was a cuss word in our family, and one you got in trouble for. You know, I would say, and I mean, I'm going to tell this story now because it's fun to tell. There's a morning I was supposed to mow the grass, Saturday morning. I go out, the lawnmower doesn't start. Pulling it, cranking it, not starting it. I go inside. I said, Dad, I can't get the lawnmower started. He goes, and I knew I'd cussed right then. He slowly got up, went outside, went to the lawnmower, pulled it a couple times. It didn't start. He pulled the spark plug, checked out a couple of things, got the fuel line flowing, all of a sudden cranked it up. All this took about 15 minutes, and I'm just standing there, and he hadn't said a word. While he cranks it up, it's running. He walks over to me, and he gets down on 2 knees and looks me right in the eye, and he goes, you see, buddy, you were just having trouble. Yes, sir, you're right. And that was a big thing with him, C-A-N-T, and he didn't like that word. And he even would say, when it's something you're unable to do yourself, you can still go ask for help, which you just did with me. Starting your lawnmower. See, you found somebody to come help you do it. Hate was a bad word. I got the lashes on the backside at my 5-year-old birthday party for saying I hate you to my brother Pat, where I had heard the word and thought it was cool and be adult to kind of say that word. Right. That was a showstopper. My mom shut the birthday party down. We went back after. I got whooped and partied, but I remember, you didn't say that. Don't lie was another one. And answer to your name. You were named your name for a reason. My mom was always said, named you Matthew. Don't answer to Matt. His name is Matthew. It means gift of God.
Like
that's your name. So now to this day, if someone goes, hey, Matt, I know they don't know me that well. You know? So what did those four things we could not do teach us? Well, don't say can't, all right? You get in trouble if you say can't. Well, all right, if I'm getting in trouble for saying can't, believe that if I'm having trouble or if I believe I can pull something off, that would be the opposite, right? The opposite of hate, love. The opposite of lying, be honest. And the answer to your name, you're named that for a reason. That had a lot to do with our identity. I'm still trying to instill those, and Camille and I both are with our children, the meaning of those 4 words. And what they mean in your life, what they mean in your mind, what they mean to your mental health. Now look, my parents were more corporal in their discipline, and to no fault of theirs. It's just how they did it. My mom truly believed, and still does to this day, I'm not going to ground you because that's taking away your time, and your time is your most valuable asset. So bend over and just take it. Bam, and it was over. And it was over. It was done. There were no grudges. You were not allowed to hold a grudge in my family. You do not. We had nights, it would be 7 a.m. We had to go to school. We'd been up all night hashing something out because you were not allowed to go to bed holding a grudge. And we handled it at 7:30 a.m. and handled it, hugged it out. They went to work. We went to school, tired as all get out. But you were not allowed to go to sleep with a grudge. But we're trying, I'm not following the corporal punishment side. That means, we do explain a lot more than my parents did. I heard a lot just because I said so. Mm-hmm. We tried to explain, and sometimes, as you know, you can look up and explain, and it's midnight. You're like, I need some sleep. And sometimes you get to that point of, because I said so. We'll talk about it later, tomorrow, you know. Right. I think we're doing it similar to my mom and dad, but we have a different way that I think we go about it. My family was, you weren't friends with, for me, especially my dad, until you were 18. That was sort of the rite of passage date where you got your freedom. And I understood that. You need a parent before you need a friend. I'm probably becoming and open to becoming friends. It's like now with my 15-year-old. Right. He just put out a post congratulating me on the book. That was like a friendly thing to do. Right. He told me he was proud of me. I'm like, aw. Well, that's cool. Yeah. That's kind of a peer-to-peer thing that he did that I appreciate. So I'm trying to. There's a word I heard from a friend who's raised 3 successful daughters out of his house, and he goes, "Boy, these teenage years that you're coming into, Matthew," he goes, "one thing try and maintain: access." And so that the friendliness I'm trying to have, when we're talking about first kisses or whatever, I'm trying to not go, "You better not." I'm going, So hopefully, when they do get in a bind, I hope that they're still comfortable enough to call me or their mother and go, "I bogeyed, I messed up, I'm in the wrong place. Can you come get me?" "Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. We'll be there." I want to keep the access open enough for that, but they still do know that we are the parent.
Yeah. You were also talking just about your childhood, but also becoming a man.
Yeah.
And when we were talking, we talked about young men, and you were saying how many people come over to you when you're kind of traveling around talking about green lights and say to you, "Thank you so much for writing your book," and how meaningful it has been to so many people.
Yeah.
We were also mentioning that young men are having a very challenging time and young people are having a very challenging time. But your book seems to have connected with a lot of those people. Can you talk a little bit about why you think that might be?
I mean, I think it's because I was very honest about in ways that I know exactly why and when and how I succeeded, and I was very honest about in ways that I succeeded that I had no idea I was going to. I got lucky, it was mystical, it happened. I think I was honest about screwing up. I think I was honest about being arrogant at times and eating crow. But I was persistent. And sort of, I think a lot of people have come to me and said, "Boy, the way you didn't let a failure take you down into despair or victimize you, and you kept on going, yep, took another lump, I got up off the mat a lot." I think it's something that they saw and said, that they're seeing, and they've come to me and said, "That I've been in those situations, and I thought it was over. I thought I was a failure. I didn't," and your book's given me courage to go, no, I'm still writing my story. I'm still, in becoming a young man in life, and this is part of growing up. I think another thing is I think people tell me that I have a certain masculinity that they appreciate, and I don't shy away from that. I think in the book inherently, and it comes a lot from my dad's teachings, is probably even indirectly in the book, I make a demarcation between, there's definitely a difference between being macho and being masculine. And, masculinity's kind of been thrown over there, and it's closer to a toxic title. And that's a shame. Because, and if it's part of it has been a battle of the sexes, part of it has been that, and I just want to remind, I think, everybody something I think we all know, and I think women especially know this, that one of the best things that women can have in this life is more good men. And they're out there. We just want to. It's not, there's a lot of good ones, and right now there's a lot wandering. The people that come up to me the most are men between 20 and 35. That they'll go, "Hey, you read Green Lights, love the book," and I go, "Thank you," and I'll catch their eye, and they put an arm out and grab me and go, "Hey, look at me. And man, it changed my life. Thank you, man." And they're like, they're not asking permission. They're coming to grabbing me, going, "Hey, look at me."
Yeah. Is that surprising? Has that been surprising for you?
Not anymore, because it's happened so much around the world.
But when it first started happening,
it first started hard, because they let me know, it shook my floor, and it got me and helped me on a direction. Thank you. And the other thing that I hear from is going, when they go, "I wouldn't be here where I am without the book," and I go, "Why?" And they go, "There was these risks I was wanting to take that I was afraid to take. And I saw you take risk and how risk had paid off for you. I saw you take risk and fall on your face too, McConaughey, but you kept taking them. Not foolish risk, but you took risk for yourself." And there's one they all said I had one I was sitting on and I wasn't taking for a while, and I got the courage to do that. And they've told me, and it's made all the difference because I finally took that risk, whether it was finding that woman or asking that mate to, marry them, or traveling to a different continent to live and chase down the work that they dreamed about doing.
Yeah. I mean, that was a funny part that I was telling my mom about, your dreams and making them, literally chased your dreams.
Yes.
Oftentimes to the Amazon River, but you chased your dreams.
Yes.
I know we're almost running out of time, but you wear so many different hats. You're an actor, you're a father, you're a husband, you're a best-selling author, you are a poet, you're a children's book author. When you think of yourself, what is the first hat that you think of yourself as?
An inspiring storytelling father.
All of it. I love that. I love that.
That's in there too.
I love that. Before we finish, I just want to ask, and coming off of your book and also this book, you've had so many dreams in your life that you've chased, and you would call yourself a dreamer. What is still on your bucket list?
Here's my bucket list, my main one. So, and this goes back to the father thing. I have a dream that when my kids are in their 40s, that my hope is that when someone goes, name your best friends on your one hand, that each one of them will have me as one of them. Yeah.
That's amazing. If you're a parent, you really get that, and that's amazing. It's very moving. Thank you so much.
Thank you
For this conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I know, I could sit, but he's like standing right here.
We have time for some questions. Our first question for the evening.
Good evening, Matthew. My name's Julian. I'm a touring chef, and I tour with musicians. And one of the musicians I toured with for several years was a band called The Cult.
The Cult?
Yes.
I was just jamming to him on the tennis court 45 minutes ago. True story.
I have another true story. We were going through Austin, Texas, and we played Lady Bird Auditorium. And I looked out into the pit, and I saw a T-shirt wearing, sunglass wearing Matthew McConaughey jamming. Can you enlighten me and the audience as to how that unfolded?
Well, I've been to many a Cult show. Who all knows a Cult? Okay. I've broken many a sweat and woke up many a next morning with a sore neck from being on the front row of a Cult concert, banging my head. Ian, I've gotten to know the band a little bit along the way. I think we came through town. Ian had reached out, and I said I was in town. He was like, "Oh man, come up and jam a song with us. Come play a song." And I have a little bit of lore out there as someone who likes to play bongos. And anyway, congas are my thing. We pulled up congas, and I got in there and jammed. I was just listening to Aphrodisiac Jacket an hour ago, and that's how that happened. And went over and yeah, yes. Hi there.
What mic is that? Because they took the wrong one. This one right there.
Well, what as being such a what character? How about depth of character?
Change it.
Right. Look, some of the great storytellers of the world are out here. All right? The only place I think where sometimes this place can be shallow, as you call it, is storytellers can get caught up in being such voyeurs that we go to the restaurant to see who's at the restaurant instead of going to the restaurant to eat the food. And if we're only observing, watching a story to see who to kind of tell a story about, a lot of times we can miss out on going, well, what story am I living? What story is live with me right now? And look, I journaled to try and understand my own story all through life and still do. I've been a voyeur in this town as well, and I like people watching as well. But I also think when I have gotten at times out here a little bit, my feet off the ground, a little bit lost, I've had, looking back, I've had pretty good timing with pulling the plug and going, I got to get out of here and go to the Amazon for a month, go hike through Africa for a month, go on a road trip with myself for a month, and put myself in uncomfortable places where I'm forced to be with me, where I'm even, and trust me, I don't always like the company when it's just me. We battle it out, me and me. But always, you know, and you have to, I also got famous, really famous, over one weekend. Trust me, my feet were off the ground. I didn't know what meant what, who was full of BS and who meant what they said. And while I enjoyed that, I said, you know what, I got to get out of here because everything's overlapping. My memory needs to catch up. I need to get my heels back on the ground. And I think I've been pretty good with that timing. And then, look, I've had my aberrations. I've been and acted like parts of myself that I'm not the most proud of. I tried things out. I had, you know, affairs with different characters who I am, and I'm like, that was us. But I knew, you know what? I will say this. When I was doing them, I knew they were stops and not stays. And I think that's part of it right there. Know what a stop is and want to know what a stay is.
Matthew, thank you for being here. I know one of your identities is as a college professor.
Yes.
I work at a university too, and I wondered what you are excited about that you see in college-age students right now.
What I'm excited about is more experiential learning. The class that I teach is experiential learning. It's called Script to Screen. We take serious film students from the opening script, the first written script, or the book, or wherever the story originated from, and chronologically give them new scripts all the way up to the shooting script, all the way up to seeing the final movie and edit and how scenes were edited. And the first original script is very different than what you see on the screen. And I noticed that 10 years ago, that every movie I made, I was like, boy, the movie that's on the screen is very different than what we started with. Some greatly, some to lesser degree. And I was like, what if we shared that experience? So I learned my books. I made my grades. I went to film school for 2 years. But where did I really learn a lot about film? When I got that first job in Dazed and Confused and got to go be on a set for 3 weeks and see it practically happen in front of me. Trust me, I came back to my class and my teachers didn't like me because they'd be saying stuff and I'd be like, that's actually not how it's done. They were like, it's you again. Shut up, McConaughey. But I'm also working with journalists and advertisers over there, and we talk to the journalists and things like, you know, talk to the teachers and the deans about, look, there's a protest going on at the tower on campus right now. Why are the journalist students sitting in this class? Go cover it. You know, those interns I had, internships that I had during college, taught me as much or more than I was learning in the class. So I'm all for the class, but I want to get more experiential learning into the classrooms. And also the work's changing, what the world needs, what companies need. And I think we need more CEOs in more cities that have colleges going and talking to the deans and saying, here's what we're looking for. Are you dispatching this? Can we help you dispatch a student with this kind of knowledge for what we're looking for? Because we're going through a gap right now. And then we have a whole new frontier with AI coming out and what jobs are going to be lost there. And I think the college curriculum is going to have to change and update itself to start dispatching more and more young people that are what's needed in the workforce.
Hey Matthew, my name's Sarah. You spoke earlier about gratitude. I believe gratitude's a cornerstone and it's super important for me. What do you do, Matthew, to pull yourself back into gratitude? either a top tip or your top couple of tips?
To call myself back into gratitude, look, I was raised with baseline gratitude. All right, I was raised with who the hell do you think you are thinking that you're so sure the sun's coming up tomorrow? My mom was like, I remember we had one pair of shoes and it was like, they start getting ragged, right? Mom, I need another pair of shoes. I really didn't try talking to you. Like, you're talking about getting a new pair of shoes. I'm going to introduce you to a kid with no feet. Then let's talk about it. You go like, oh, jeez. All right, yeah, you're right. My shoes are okay. So we were hammered on like baseline gratitude. And look, I live an affluent life. I've succeeded. We have food on the table. The rent's paid. We get to travel and have, you know, the ability to go even with medical, you know, to pay for medicines that we might need that a lot of people do not have. At the same time, I'm working on that with my kids. I don't want my children to be entitled, and I still want them to appreciate that food on that table. You'd have to work for that, bud. Appreciate that. This roof over here, yeah, you're living rent free, and you don't have to be. We could change this up real quick. So I think it's important, and I mean I still do. You know, I can get, you know, have enough stuff going on where I can take for granted certain things that I have, and I'm not appreciative of them. But that's also when I need to catch myself, and that's also what's good about Sundays. Sundays humble me back down to, hey, you're breathing, you got a chance, you got another day, try and make something happen. You got good food in your fridge, you got the family's pretty healthy. Those are not givens. Even in my position, those are not givens.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Hi, Mr. McConaughey. I just had a real quick question. When you were writing Just Because, was there one that stuck out the most to you when you wrote it down?
Right.
Because when I was reading it, there was one that stuck out the most to me when I read it. So was there one that stuck out the most to you when you wrote it?
Well, there's a couple of them. I mean, I like a bunch of them, but the one of them is just because you want one more doesn't mean that you need to. Right? I love wants and needs. Wants and needs. I think that the spot that we're all, the best place we can get to individually is actually where what we want is what we need. Where what we need is actually what we desire and want. That's hard to get those two balanced. You know what I mean? We usually have these wants, but it's not actually what we need, and there becomes a debit, or it's too hard, and we just do what we need, and we don't do anything of what we want. And then it imbalances again. I think that heaven on earth is when we balance what we want and what we need. Hard place to get to daily. But I like that one. And it's the kid with the cookie.
And our final question back there.
Hi, Matthew. I just wanted to say I've been a fan since The Wedding Planner. And
Thank
if you
you.
ask my brother, I watched it 10 times a day, rewind the VHS. But I wanted to ask if you have any advice, because life is, like you said, full of paradoxes and whatnot. But one thing could be good and one thing could be bad. So how do you deal with the bad when you know something is good is happening, but then equally as bad?
Right, the consequences of each. I mean, everything has an exchange rate, you know, in life. Every decision we make has an exchange rate. You know, for every asset, there's some deficit somewhere. You know what I mean? And that's another thing that I don't think we put on the table and talk about as much. We you know, I was talking about this, a Biden student debt loan. What's helping out a lot of people that really needed some amnesty on their debt? Yay. On the other side, I also go, dang it. I don't like that we're sending a message to a whole new generation that, hey, if you borrow $1 and you wait long enough not to pay it back, you'll only owe a quarter or nothing at all. I don't like that. So, look, when something bad has happened in my life, I go through my ruts, for sure. I don't like it. I'm clumsy in it. I try to stay away from heavy machinery and sharp objects. There's times, I got plenty of days where I'm like, I want to insulate the walls and put on my helmet and chin strap, where I don't trust myself, But I do have an unending faith that I know it's going to pass. This too shall pass. And whatever it is I'm supposed to weather, I'm going to weather it, and I'll come out the other side.
Thank you, Katherine. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.